Hey everyone. Welcome to AfriHeart Stories, your go-to spot for African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe and drop a comment. Now sit back and enjoy. Kemi was halfway through icing cupcakes for a late-night client when her phone rang. It buzzed 3 times before she finally pulled off her flour-dusted gloves and checked the screen. Mummy calling. She sighed. It was 10:47 p.m. A call from her mother at this hour was never casual. Kemi, you have to come early tomorrow, her mother said without so much as a greeting. Kemi rubbed her temples. Mummy, I have work till 2 a.m. I have 3 cake orders to finish. I thought I was just helping with jollof rice and small chops for Folek's party. Her mother exhaled loudly. We're counting on you. The decorator is already misbehaving. I told everyone that you're coming by 6 a.m. Please don't embarrass me. 6. Kemi blinked. I wasn't. The line clicked. She stared at the phone. Call ended. No thanks, no consideration, just expectation. That was the story of her life. Kemi lived in a 1-bedroom flat behind a noisy diesel generator. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She ran her small catering hustle out of her kitchen, scraping through orders for birthdays and baby showers. At 29, she'd built her brand alone with no loans, no rich uncles, and certainly no applause from her family. Her elder sister Folek, the star of tomorrow's engagement party, was their mother's golden child. Pretty, loud, and constantly admired. Her younger sister, Lola, lived on Instagram and pretended to be a brand influencer, although no one knew what she influenced besides chaos. And then there was Kemi, the invisible one. The one everyone called when something needed fixing. She went back to frosting the cupcakes with a clenched jaw. At 5:55 a.m., with dark circles under her eyes and her apron tied around her tired waist, Kemi arrived at her mother's compound in Surulere. The gate creaked open and she stepped into chaos. Plastic chairs littered the compound. Coolers were open, food ingredients piled on counters. The decorator's ladder leaned against a half-decorated canopy. And in the kitchen there was flour, raw meat, half-washed vegetables, and not a single person cooking. Kemi, her mother shouted from upstairs. You're late. I said 6, Kemi muttered to herself. This is 5:55. Downstairs she passed by the living room where Folek, draped in a satin robe and sipping orange juice, flipped through a bridal magazine. Oh, look who decided to show up, Folek said with a smirk. Our little cook. Kemi ignored her and dropped her bag in the kitchen. Her phone buzzed. A client was asking for delivery confirmation. Another customer wanted to push a wedding date forward. But none of that mattered right now. She had to feed 150 people. She put on music from her playlist, instrumental Afrobeat, the kind that helped her think, and began sorting the ingredients. No one offered help. By 7:30 a.m., Kemi was already sweating. Her headscarf was soaked, and her arms ached from slicing onions. She worked around plantain chips, fried chicken, puff, and began boiling water for the jollof rice. Her sisters passed by now and then. Lola, wearing high heels and applying makeup in the mirror near the kitchen, chuckled. Make sure the meat is soft. Oh, last time it was like stone. Folek called out, please don't mess up the small chops, Kemi. Real guests are coming. Their laughter echoed like drums of insult in Kemi's head. But she said nothing. She couldn't afford to drop her focus. As she stirred the pepper base, she noticed a man at the far end of the compound. He leaned casually on a pillar, hands in his pockets, watching her. He wore a cream linen shirt, dark slacks and leather loafers. Neatly groomed. Come. She squinted. Was he part of the planning crew? Their eyes met briefly. He nodded once and turned away. At noon the sun was blazing. Smoke from the outdoor frying pan swirled around her, mixing with the sweet aroma of grilled chicken. Kemi tied a second scarf around her waist to mop sweat. Still no one had helped her. At some point, a large container of groundnut oil slipped from the counter and spilled across the tiled floor. Jesus, she gasped, jumping back as oil slicked across the space. The noise brought her mother storming down. What is this mess? Mama shouted. Kemi, are you trying to destroy this day? I didn't mean to. The container was open. I'll clean it. Useless girl. Mama snapped. No focus. This is exactly why nobody sees you as serious. Kemi clenched her fists and swallowed the lump forming in her throat. Guests were arriving. She couldn't break down now. She nodded. I'll clean it. She mopped the floor quickly and resumed frying. Every movement now was heavier, her spirit already bruised. By mid-afternoon all the food was done. She had packed over 10 coolers, aligned trays of samosas, puff puffs, meat pies, jollof rice, coconut rice, salads, and peppered chicken. Her apron was stained and damp. Her legs were trembling. She peeked into the living room. Folake and Lola were taking selfies, posing with their outfits, filters applied on Snapchat. They mimicked her stirring motions and bent over, clutching their stomachs in laughter. Kemi slowly closed the curtain. She turned back to the kitchen. A small red-bound book was sitting on the far shelf, her father's old cooking journal. She hadn't seen it in years. She opened the journal, the scent of old pages and ink wafting up. Between 2 pages, something shiny caught her eye. Wrapped in foil, a small note. She unfolded it with trembling fingers. "You were born to serve, but never forget your worth. Keep cooking, my star. They'll see one day." Dad. Tears welled in her eyes. She wiped them away. "They'll see one day," she whispered. By 5 p.m. the music started. Guests filled the compound. Canopies shook with laughter. Camera lights flashed. The event was alive. Kemi slipped into the back to clean herself up. She hadn't even eaten. As she passed by the drinks table, someone tapped her shoulder. It was the man from earlier. The one in the cream shirt. He smiled. "You made all this?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you," he said simply. "The smell brought me here." He walked off toward a reserved seat, front row. Kemi blinked. Who was he? And why did he look so familiar? The sun had barely dipped when Kemi returned to the kitchen. Her hands ached. Her ankles throbbed. But there was still a pile of dishes in the sink and 2 batches of meat to stir-fry. All she wanted was to sit for 5 minutes, but rest wasn't on the menu, not with her sisters watching. "Are you done frying the spring rolls?" Folake's voice rang from the hallway. She stood with both hands on her hips, her gelly perfectly tied, lips painted blood red. Kemi turned to the stove. "Almost done." Lola leaned against the doorframe, phone in hand. "You better not mess it up. My followers are waiting for pictures and the food is the main aesthetic." Kemi bit her lip. "You could help, you know. Just 5 minutes." Folake cut in with a laugh. "Me? In this outfit? Are you mad?" Lola joined in. "My nails cost 25,000 naira. I'm not dipping them in stew." They left the kitchen, cackling like cartoon villains. Kemi took a deep breath and turned the heat down on the stove. The noise of the celebration outside grew louder, music, laughter, clinking glasses. Inside, her sweat soaked through her clothes. She looked at the meat frying in the pan. "Perfect," she whispered to herself. "Let them eat, but I'll cook with pride." Still, as she bent over to drain the oil, she couldn't help but hear their voices again. "She's always been the helper," Folake had said once. "That's her lane. It suits her." And that's how they treated her. Never once considering that maybe Kemi had dreams too. The sun had set now, casting an orange glow over the canopies outside. Lights flickered on, soft yellow bulbs strung along ropes. Guests mingled, sipping drinks, laughing over small chops. Kemi moved between trays and coolers, making sure everything was in place. She wore a simple black blouse and jeans now, apron gone, but sweat still clung to her skin. Her arms felt like lead. Her feet begged for rest. She stepped outside briefly to pass a tray of samosas to a server, and locked eyes again with the man from earlier. He sat in the reserved section, surrounded by 2 women in geli and a man in agbada. Still, his eyes followed her like he was studying a rare painting. Not with lust, but with curiosity. Kemi looked away quickly. She returned to the kitchen and leaned against the counter, heart fluttering. Who was this man? And why did his gaze make her feel seen even for a moment? Outside, Folake made her grand entrance. The music turned down and the MC announced, "Give it up for our beautiful bride-to-be." Guests clapped and took pictures. Kemi peeked through the curtain and saw her sister twirl like a pageant queen. Lola ran up and adjusted her geli dramatically as if she were the stylist. But in all that glitz, Kemi noticed, the man hadn't even glanced their way. He still looked toward the kitchen. Just when she thought she could breathe, disaster struck. The second tray of jollof rice, the biggest batch yet, was half-cooked when the gas burner suddenly went off. "What now?" Kemi shouted. She checked the regulator. Empty. She ran to the side storage and grabbed the backup cylinder, but the knob wouldn't fit. "Lola," she called, voice trembling. "I need help switching the gas." "A beg, ask someone else." Lola called from the living room. Kemi wrestled with the regulator, her hands slick with oil. Her vision blurred. She hadn't eaten all day. Her stomach was in knots. The pressure, the exhaustion, it all boiled over. Her hands slipped. The pot of half-cooked rice tumbled sideways, landing with a loud splat. Smoke. Steam. And chaos. No, she gasped. She fell to her knees and tried to salvage what she could. Her mother stormed in. What happened? She barked. The gas. Something went wrong. Useless girl. You've ruined the jollof rice. God forbid. I can fix it, just give me. Fix what? It's burnt. I told you this one is not reliable. Kemi didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat was tight. She picked up the pot, trembling. That's when she noticed a shadow near the door. The man again. He was standing just outside, watching silently. Their eyes met. He didn't look away. He simply nodded again. It was the smallest gesture, but it said everything. Kemi returned to the living room with 2 trays of puff puff and spring rolls. She set them on the table, then stepped back quietly, ready to disappear into the background. From across the room, she heard Lola burst out laughing. Wait, do it again, she giggled, phone in hand. Folake bent slightly, held an imaginary spoon and mimicked stirring. My name is Kemi. I live in the kitchen, she said in a fake nasal voice. Guests laughed. Even their mother snorted. Kemi stood frozen behind the curtain. She'd been mocked before. Teased for her calloused hands, her apron-stained clothes, her obsession with spices and recipes. But this hit deeper. She backed away, bumped into the wall, and clutched her chest. Her eyes burned, but no tears fell. She turned and walked back to the kitchen. As she reached for the cooler lid, her hand brushed against something metallic, the journal again. Her father's note still sat inside it. She opened it. You were born to serve, but never forget your worth. Kemi sat on a small stool and hugged the journal. Outside, laughter roared. But inside, a storm was forming. She wasn't just the cook. She was the heart of the day. And they would know it, soon. The house grew noisier as more guests arrived, yet Kemi remained in the shadows, packing, wiping, reheating. The kitchen had become a furnace, her shirt stuck to her back, her head spinning. But the food had to go out warm. She opened the final cooler to pack the last batch of peppered chicken. Beneath the foil tray, she noticed something odd, a sheet of folded paper wrapped in foil. Her brows furrowed. Curious, she reached for it and unwrapped it with trembling fingers. It was her father's handwriting. She hadn't seen it in years. My sweet Kemi, if you ever find this, it means you're still cooking. I know they overlook you. I know they mock what they don't understand. But don't stop. You have fire in your hands, and gold in your heart. Love. Dad. Kemi sat still, the foil crumpling in her hand. She remembered when they used to cook together, how he would hum old highlife songs and let her taste the stew first. He was the only one who ever truly celebrated her passion. A tear escaped her cheek and dropped onto the cooler lid. She quickly wiped it away, stood tall, and closed the lid. I'll finish what I started, she whispered. By 6:30 p.m. the party was in full swing. Laughter echoed from every corner. Servers danced between tables, balancing trays of drinks and food. The scent of grilled suya and hot puff puff filled the air. Kemi carried one final tray to the drink station, quietly passing behind the guests. Then she saw him. The man in the cream linen shirt, the stranger who had watched her all day, was now seated at a decorated table near the stage. His seat had a name tag, reserved, Mr. Iola. He looked out of place, refined, calm, watching everything. He caught her eye again. Good evening, he said quietly. She nodded, surprised. Evening, sir. I believe I owe you a thank you, he said, gesturing toward the jollof rice. That's your handiwork? Kemi blinked. Why, yes, sir. He smiled. It's perfect. Before she could reply, someone called her name. She turned to see Lola waving frantically with her phone. Kemi, bring extra puff puff here. Influencers want more. Kemi glanced back, but Mr. Iola had already returned to his seat. She walked off quickly, confused. Why did a man like him care about who cooked? Dinner was in full swing. Guests clapped as waiters dropped trays in front of them. But then trouble. Kemi, a server whispered frantically. We forgot to heat the second tray of jollof rice. What? She dropped the ladle she was holding. They've served half the guests cold rice already. Panic surged through her. She sprinted to the serving area, where people were already frowning and asking for replacements. Lola came storming up. What is this nonsense, Kemi? This rice is cold. Do you want to embarrass us? I'm fixing it. Fix it now or get out. A crowd of guests had started murmuring. Kemi ran to the back, grabbed the other tray and shoved it into the warming cabinet. She turned up the heat and began stirring frantically. Burning her fingers, she worked through the chaos, the noise, the accusations. But as she served the warm batch, she noticed something strange. Guests were pointing toward Mr. Iola's table. He hadn't touched his plate. He raised a finger and gestured to one of the servers. "I want her to serve me," he said, pointing at Kemi. She froze. Meh. Kemi's heart pounded as she wiped her hands and carefully plated a fresh dish. She arranged the meat, jollof rice, fried plantain, and spicy sauce with precision, like she was serving royalty. Hands shaking, she carried the plate toward Mr. Iola. He stood when she approached. "Thank you," he said, taking the plate from her hands himself. Guests near him paused their conversations. The music dimmed slightly. Kemi nodded, unsure what to say. He looked at her with quiet kindness. "Your cooking tells a story. Every bite is honest." Her lips parted slightly, stunned. "Don't let them reduce you," he added, glancing toward her sisters in the corner. "They don't see what I see yet. But they will." Then he sat down and began eating. Kemi turned and walked away slowly, her heart racing, not from fear but from something she hadn't felt in a long time. Oh. An hour later the music cut and the MC took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to hear from the couple of the hour, Folake and her handsome fiancé Chuka." The crowd clapped and cheered. Folake rose like a queen, adjusting her coral beads. Chuka smiled beside her, looking drowsy from champagne. "Thank you all for coming," Folake began. "This day is a dream come true. We're so grateful to our family, especially our mummy." Murmurs of agreement flowed through the guests. "Let's also clap for my sister Kemi," Folake added with a smirk. "She worked hard. Like always." A few polite claps followed. Kemi looked down at her shoes. The MC smiled. "Before we continue, we have a surprise speaker. Someone very special. Please welcome Mr. Iola." Gasp. Whispers. Folake's face changed instantly. Mr. Iola stood slowly and took the mic. "Good evening," he said, smiling politely. "I came here for food, but I found a story." All eyes turned. In the back, while many were busy posing and laughing, someone labored without rest. "And her food," he paused, "told a better story than any speech here tonight." He turned toward the crowd. "Where is Miss Kemi?" All heads whipped around. Kemi stood stunned. Her sisters froze. "Kemi," he said, pointing to her with reverence, "this evening belongs to you." A stillness swept over the crowd. Folake's confident smile faded. Lola's jaw slackened. Even their mother leaned forward, eyes wide with confusion. Mr. Iola's deep voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Before I speak," he began, "I need you all to know who I am, not for pride but for clarity." He paused. "My name is Ao Iola. I am the founder and CEO of Iola Foods Limited. Our company services over 300 clients across West Africa." Murmurs spread through the audience. A few guests gasped aloud. Lola covered her mouth in disbelief. Folake's fiancé squinted, then reached for his phone, probably Googling him under the table. "But that's not why I'm here tonight," Mr. Iola continued. "I didn't come because of business or because of this engagement. I came because of a scent, an aroma that caught my attention from 3 houses down." Guests chuckled nervously. He smiled, then turned toward Kemi. "I followed that scent. And I found her." All eyes landed on Kemi. She stood frozen near the drinks table, her eyes darting between the crowd and Mr. Iola. He walked slowly toward her. "I've spent months searching for a cook. Someone whose food has soul, whose work speaks louder than decorations or dresses." He faced her directly. "I found you today." Silence blanketed the crowd. Folake's lips twitched. Lola's hand trembled against her phone. Their mother stared blankly, unmoving. Kemi's chest tightened. She opened her mouth, but no words came. "I've been eating your food unknowingly for months," Mr. Iola said softly. "Your small event orders? Some of them landed in my office. My staff didn't know your name. But your flavors stayed with me." He looked at the audience. She didn't have a booth at a food fair. No billboard. No sponsorship. Just pure talent. Gasps and nods began echoing from the back rows. "You cooked from behind the scenes today. You weren't in photos. You weren't thanked. But you were the backbone of this celebration." Mr. Iola took a breath. "And now, I want to thank you in the only language you understand, opportunity." Kemi blinked. "I'm offering you a 6-figure brand development deal. Full production sponsorship. National rollout. Staff. Kitchen. Studio. Everything." Screams erupted. People stood. Applauded. Phones recorded. Kemi stood still, barely processing. Her knees wobbled. "Are you serious?" she whispered. He smiled. "Dead serious." The cheers were thunderous, but not everyone was clapping. Folake forced a smile, then turned toward Lola. What is happening? Lola shook her head. That's Iola Foods. That's the CEO. This man is real. Their mother fanned herself. But, Kemi? That girl? A deal? For what? Back at the stage, Mr. Iola continued. I know how many of you overlooked her. I watched it. I saw the insults, the mockery, the way she carried everything while others wore heels. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Kemi's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. He stepped back and waved her forward. Kemi, please join me. The crowd parted as she walked toward the stage, trembling. Her apron was stained. Her shoes were dusty. Yet to them she looked like royalty. When she reached him, he leaned close. You deserve this. She whispered, but why me? Because I see what others didn't, he replied. And because I owe someone who once helped me, with nothing in return. He held her hand up like a champion. Applause exploded again. Her sisters stood frozen, mouths open, unable to believe what they were seeing. The MC returned, still wide-eyed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think today just got a new highlight. Guests whistled and cheered. Even the DJ began playing celebratory music. Cameras flashed. Phones waved. Kemi stood in the middle, overwhelmed. Auntie she'd never spoken to before rushed toward her. Kemi, I knew you were special. I always told your mother, this girl is different. Even distant cousins hugged her tightly. Meanwhile, Folake and Lola huddled in the corner, forgotten. Their mother walked up to Mr. Iola, fake smile plastered on. Sir, good evening. I'm the mother. Very proud. He gave a curt nod. Nice to meet you, he replied coolly, then turned to Kemi again. Let's talk terms tomorrow. My driver will pick you. Yes, sir, she said, her voice barely audible. For once, Kemi was the center of attention. But she didn't boast. She didn't gloat. She simply smiled, and let the applause wash over her like a healing rain. Lola couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her handbag and stormed out of the hall, high heels clacking furiously across the compound. I can't believe this nonsense. Kemi of all people? Is this a joke? She yelled. Folake chased after her. Lola, calm down. You're embarrassing us. No, Folake. She embarrassed us. That stupid apron girl just became the bride of the party. Kemi stood inside watching them from the window. For a moment she felt sorry for them, but only for a moment. Their pride had built towers so high they never saw her climbing in silence. Now the towers were shaking. Guests began whispering. Even Folake's fiancée was glued to his phone, watching a live clip of Mr. Iola's announcement on Instagram. Folake returned inside trying to save face. She walked up to Kemi and gave her a hug that felt like cardboard. Well done, she said through gritted teeth. Big girl now, ABI? Kemi smiled gently. I've always been big. You just didn't see it. Folake froze. And for once, Kemi walked away first. Felt like a dream. 1 minute, Kemi was bent over a boiling pot, wiping sweat with the back of her hand. The next, she was seated at the high table, beside the CEO of Iola Foods. The decorators rushed over with gold-trimmed placemats and extra serviettes. A server arrived with bottled water and wine. Her chair was now covered in velvet. As she sat there, shy, stunned, silent, the guests began chanting her name. Kemi, Kemi, Kemi. Flashbulbs popped. Phones filmed. Aunties danced around her. One elderly woman removed her gelly and waved it in the air like a victory banner. Kemi felt dizzy. She had never been the center of anything. Folake had always been the beauty. Lola had always been the show-off. She was the utility girl. The fixer. The one who never got a birthday party. But now, she was seen. As a waiter refilled her glass, Folake walked by stiffly and whispered, You're really enjoying this, aren't you? Kemi looked at her. I'm just sitting, she said. For the first time today. The spotlight wasn't blinding, it was healing. She didn't crave revenge. She just wanted to breathe without feeling small. And finally, she could. Backstage, the noise faded into a dull roar as Kemi found a quiet corner behind the drinks tent. She needed a moment, just to process everything. Her hand still trembled slightly, her heart still beat fast. But for the first time, it wasn't from fear or exhaustion. It was from disbelief. She sat on an upturned cooler and closed her eyes. Kemi, a voice called softly. She opened her eyes. Lola stood a few feet away, her lashes smudged, her makeup uneven. She looked shaken. Oh, I didn't mean those things I said, Lola muttered. I was just jealous. We all were. Kemi tilted her head. Jealous of what? You. Your strength. Your peace. The fact that you never complain even when we give you hell. I thought I was the one who'd make it first. Kemi nodded slowly. You still can, Lola. But not by tearing people down. Lola looked away. I'm sorry. Before Kemi could reply, Folake appeared, arms folded. This is unbelievable. One pot of rice and you've turned into Oprah. Kemi raised an eyebrow. Folake. No, let me finish, Folake snapped. You always played the victim. Now everyone's acting like you're a saint. I'm not a saint, Kemi said quietly. I'm just tired of being invisible. Folake's lips quivered. For a second, her pride slipped, and her pain peeked through. But she turned and walked away. Mr. Ayoola stepped out from behind a canopy and walked over. You handled that well. Kemi chuckled bitterly. I've had practice. He sat beside her. They'll come around. She smiled faintly. I'm not waiting for them anymore. The next morning, Kemi stood in front of a tall glass building in Victoria Island. Her palms were sweaty. She wore a modest black jumpsuit with a clean headscarf, her only pair of heels clicking nervously on the marble floors as she stepped into the elevator. Her phone buzzed. Mummy, don't forget we have church on Sunday. You can't stop now because of one deal. She ignored it. At the 14th floor, the doors opened into a sleek office with indoor plants, art-lined walls, and gold signage that read, Ayoola Foods HQ. Mr. Ayoola was waiting. Welcome, Chef Kemi, he said with a smile. Chef, she blinked. It suits you better than helper. Don't you think? She smiled. Inside the boardroom, a lawyer and brand manager were already seated. They presented her with a 12-month culinary development deal, including a branded food line, mentorship sessions, recipe packaging, and a monthly salary double what she'd ever made before. Kemi stared at the paper. Are you sure I'm worth all this? Mr. Ayoola leaned forward. You were worth it before you even knew it. Kemi signed her name, each letter trembling. It was done. She was no longer just the family cook. She was a brand. Outside, photographers waited. She stepped into the sunlight, face calm, heart soaring. This wasn't just a contract. It was her emancipation. 2 weeks later, Folake sat slouched in the living room, scrolling furiously on her phone. The sponsorship email still hadn't come. The decorators had canceled due to double booking. Her fiancé, Chuka, had stopped answering calls since he discovered their wedding wouldn't be trending. No TV deal, no brand endorsement, no influencer traction. Meanwhile, every feed, blog, and morning show was ablaze with one name. Chef Kemi. Kemi's story had gone viral. Her humble rise from the kitchen shadows to the spotlight of Ayoola Foods had captured the public's heart. Interview clips circulated everywhere. She was mocked by her own family, and now owns her own food brand. From pot-stained aprons to magazine covers, meet Nigeria's newest culinary queen. Even schoolgirls on TikTok were doing the Kemi stir dance, mimicking the way she'd stirred jollof rice at her sister's engagement. Folake dropped her phone on the couch and groaned. Mummy, she called out. Have you seen what this girl has turned into? She's acting like she's Beyoncé. Their mother walked in holding a copy of the Punch newspaper. Kemi's face was on the cover. Again. Don't start, Mama sighed. Everything is not competition. At least she's doing something with her life. Folake stared, mouth agape. You're on her side now? I'm not on anyone's side, Mama said. I just know who's working. Just then the television switched to a live segment. Next up, we have the phenomenal woman whose story is inspiring millions. Chef Kemi joins us now in our studio. Folake froze. The screen lit up with Kemi, seated elegantly, her hair wrapped in a royal blue turban, eyes glowing with calm strength. She wore a simple Ankara dress with gold accents, still herself but elevated. The host smiled. Kemi, what's one thing you've learned in these past weeks? Kemi looked into the camera. I've learned that it's okay to be in the background, until it's time to shine. Never dim your fire just because others can't handle your light. The crowd in the studio clapped. Folake turned away and lowered the volume. Nonsense motivational quote. But even she couldn't deny it. Her sister, yes, the one she used to mock, was now a national symbol of resilience. Meanwhile, across town, Kemi sat with her PR manager in the green room, sipping warm Zobo. That was perfect, the woman said. You're trending again. Kemi smiled but said nothing. Her silence wasn't from arrogance. It was from balance. She had tasted ridicule for so long that now even applause felt delicate. She wanted to keep her feet on the ground. As she left the studio, she was surprised to see a familiar face in the waiting area. Folek. She stood in black sunglasses and a body-hugging dress, hands folded. Kemi approached slowly. You came? Folek shrugged. Don't flatter yourself. I was in the area. Kemi nodded. Of course. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Folek sighed. Kemi? I know I haven't said this right before. But you did good. Really good. Kemi looked her sister in the eye. Thank you. Folek blinked. She had expected sarcasm or a dramatic clapback. But Kemi gave none. No need to drag her pain out for display. She had outgrown that. Are you okay? Kemi asked. Folek hesitated. Honestly, no. The wedding plans are crashing. Chuka pulled out. Said he needs time to figure things out. I feel like my whole life is falling apart while yours is being built. Kemi placed a hand on her shoulder. Maybe that's a good thing. Folek frowned. Good? You built your life on applause, Kemi said gently. I built mine on purpose. Silence stretched. Folek bit her lip, tears forming. I was horrible to you. Yes, Kemi replied. But I loved you anyway, she added softly. Folek wept. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quiet sobs like a balloon finally letting out air. Later that week, Kemi sat in her small home office, now transformed with a ring light, whiteboard, and samples of spice bottles labeled Kemi's Signature Blend. She scrolled through a comment from a fan. You're the reason I'm not giving up on myself. Thank you. Kemi smiled. A knock sounded at the door. It was Mr. Iola. He walked in carrying a sleek file and a warm grin. We just secured your first supermarket deal. Abuja wants you. Kemi's eyes widened. Already? He nodded. And that's just the beginning. We haven't even launched your cooking channel yet. She placed a hand on her chest. Thank you, sir. He shook his head. Don't thank me. I just lit the fire. You were already cooking. They both laughed. By the way, he added, you're being nominated for the Women in Business Award next month. You'll need to prepare a short speech. Kemi blinked. Me? An award? You earned it. As he left, Kemi glanced at the small red cooking journal sitting on her shelf. She walked over, opened it, and added one more line to the back page. They mocked the cook. But the cook became the table. The sun rose slowly over Surulere, casting golden hues across the compound where it all began. The same walls that had echoed with laughter at Kemi's expense now stood quiet. But today she wasn't here to cook. She was here to visit. Kemi stepped out of the tinted SUV, her branded bag slung over one shoulder, her outfit simple but elegant. A modest brown kaftan, flats, and gold-studded earrings that glimmered beneath her silk head wrap. As she approached the gate, the compound security man, formerly uninterested in her presence, opened it wide with a grin. Good morning, Chef Kemi, he beamed. She smiled. Good morning, Musa. Inside, her mother was watering plants in the corner when she looked up and saw her middle daughter. Oh, Kemi. Mummy, Kemi greeted softly, I brought you something. She held up a box, an early batch of her new spice blend line, with a personalized label, Mama Sunday Stew. Her mother took it slowly, fingers trembling. It smells nice, she murmured. Kemi nodded. I modeled it after your tomato base. The one you taught me when I was 12. Mama's eyes misted. There was a silence between them, one loaded with all the years of misunderstanding, unspoken affection, and mismatched expectations. I didn't always treat you right, her mother admitted. You reminded me of your father. Too quiet. Too kind. And I was scared that kindness wouldn't survive in this world. Kemi exhaled. It did, Mummy. It did more than survive. They stood there for a while, the box between them. Then Kemi asked, Where's my journal? Mama looked toward the kitchen. It's on the counter. I didn't throw it away. Kemi stepped inside the kitchen, still smelling of pepper, onions, and something familiar. There it was. Her old red cooking journal. Worn edges. Dog-eared corners. Years of notes, experiments, and ideas. She picked it up and flipped to the back. There, in her late father's handwriting. You were born to serve, but never forget your worth. She smiled and whispered, They didn't see it then, Baba. But they see it now. Later that afternoon, Kemi sat at a roundtable conference with 3 interns, young women like she once was. One had tears in her eyes as she explained how she dropped out of catering school due to ridicule from her family. I understand, Kemi told her. They laughed at me too. Called me a kitchen rat. But now, that kitchen is my kingdom. She handed the girl an apron embroidered with Chef Kemi mentorship program. The intern clutched it like a badge of honor. When the session ended, Kemi received a notification on her phone. A new video had just gone live from the Iola Foods channel. She tapped play. It was a montage. Clips of her cooking at the engagement party. The moment Iola raised her hand. Her first day at the headquarters. Her spice bottles being packaged. Children imitating her on TikTok. But the final clip was her sitting quietly in a kitchen writing in her red journal. Narration played in her own voice. Sometimes the world sees the glitter and forgets the grind. But even when they don't clap, cook anyway. Even when they laugh, serve with joy. Because purpose doesn't need permission. The video ended. Tears pooled in her eyes, but this time from peace. She leaned back and looked around her new studio kitchen. Stainless steel counters. Professional ovens. Walls lined with jars bearing her name. A production team setting up for her weekly cooking segment. She stood. "Talu," she called out to her assistant, "please bring in the prep list. We're doing smoky party rice today." "Yes, chef." Talu replied cheerfully. As the crew buzzed around her, she glanced toward the side door. Standing there quietly was Lola. She had no makeup on. No fancy wig. Just jeans, flats, and a notebook clutched to her chest. Kemi raised an eyebrow. "You're early." "I didn't want to miss anything," Lola said. I really want to learn." Kemi nodded slowly. "Then grab an apron." Lola exhaled. "Thank you, Kemi." "I'm not doing it for you," Kemi said gently. "I'm doing it for every girl they told to shut up and serve." And with that she handed Lola a prep knife. That night, Kemi returned home, removed her shoes and sank into her couch. The house was quiet. Peaceful. She reached for her journal and opened a blank page. Final entry. "They saw a cook. I became a queen. They mocked my hands. Now they seek my touch. They ignored my light. Now they dine at my table. But I forgive them. Because I finally saw myself. And that was enough." She closed the journal, stood up and walked to her window. Outside, a billboard glowed brightly across the road. It showed her face. And the words. "They mocked her for cooking alone. Now she's feeding a nation." Kemi smiled. She didn't need applause anymore. She was the applause. Liked it? Thumbs up, subscribe and join the AfriHeart fam. Your support fuels our stories. Until next time.